This time we'll be talking about chronic disease and about preventing premature death. When we're born, there are statistics that show how long we're probably going to live. If we die before that, that's regarded as a premature death. In case you missed the first video that we started a week ago, I'm going to include the introduction here because I made some comments that I think are going to be relevant to all these future videos. Hi, I'm Lee Schilling, and I've been a physician for over 45 years, but not until about 4 years ago did I become aware of the things that are really important for my patients. And those things weren't taught in med school when I started. We were taught to diagnose and to treat. But the most important thing wasn't taught, and that is to prevent the need to diagnose and treat. And that's what I'll be talking about over the next few weeks, and trying to share information that I've learned in the last 4 years about nutrition and lifestyle. I think it's critically important because now 50% of adults are going to be spending the last 5 to 10 years of their lives with chronic diseases. And I don't think that's the right way for us to do things. And that's what I'll be talking about. Thanks. So chronic diseases and conditions such as heart disease, stroke, cancer, type 2 diabetes, obesity, and arthritis are among the most common, costly, and preventable of all health problems. As of 2012, about half of all adults, 117 million people, had one or more chronic health condition. 1 of 4 adults had 2 or more chronic health conditions. 7 of the top 10 causes of death are from chronic diseases. 2 of these chronic diseases, heart disease and cancer, together accounted for nearly 48% of all deaths. Obesity is a serious health concern. During 2009 and 10, more than a third of adults, or about 78 million people, were obese, defined a body mass index or BMI greater than 30, and nearly 1 of 5 youths aged 2 to 19 was obese. Arthritis is the most common cause of disability. Of the 53 million adults with a doctor diagnosis of arthritis, more than 22 million say they have trouble with their usual activities because of the arthritis. Arthritis can be managed better by diet and medications in many cases. Diabetes is the leading cause of kidney failure, lower limb amputations other than those caused by injury, and new cases of blindness among adults. Diabetes is also something that can be prevented as well as cured with proper management, such as diet. Diabetes is another disease that can be prevented, and if you have it, it might even be able to be reversed. Diet is very, very important, and yet you can eat as much as you want if you eat the right things. What can be seen here is that in the year 1900, there were very few deaths from coronary heart disease. Around the 1930s, that began to change. Many heart problems were dealt with, including ones children were born with. At the same time, a new problem began to arise, CHD, or coronary heart disease. You can see that peaked in 1970 and then decreased. The research about cholesterol was being publicized, and that helped some, and in 1982, statins were introduced. They account for a further decrease in deaths from coronary heart disease, and in 2005 had sales of $25 billion. That's a lot of money. Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn has been doing research before statins arrived, showing that changing the diet works even better and is much less expensive. We'll be talking more about him as we go on here. In the 1940s, antibiotics were introduced, which helped decrease deaths from infections. Coronary arteries, which I have pictured on this slide, supply oxygen-rich blood to the heart. And the heart's a muscle. When it can't get enough oxygen, it causes pain, and that's called angina. Research suggests that coronary heart disease starts when certain things damage the inner layers of the coronary arteries. And these things include the following: smoking, high levels of certain fats and cholesterol in the blood, which come from our diet, high blood pressure, high levels of sugar in the blood due to insulin resistance or diabetes, and blood vessel inflammation. Well, we can control and avoid these if we know how. Lifestyle and nutrition are key. And this slide lists some of the chronic diseases that half the adults in America spend their last 5 to 10 years with. It's expensive, as the slide shows, and not the best way to spend the last years of your life. It's avoidable. If you never learn about health harmful things, it'll be hard to know what to avoid. Let's look at what happens to us at different ages. This slide breaks it down by age listed at the top. Before age 45, accidents are the leading cause of premature death, and they're certainly not related to what we eat. May be related to what we drink sometimes. After that, after accidents, cancer is a leading cause of premature death until age 65. At 65, heart disease is the leading cause, and Alzheimer's joins the top 10. At age 15, diabetes makes the top 10 and stays. All these things are related to what we eat. Healthcare has really become disease care. We can fix that for ourselves and our families. Let's see how. Vegetarians don't eat meat, but vegans not only don't eat meat, they also exclude any animal-derived things like eggs and dairy, as well as processed foods. Probably isn't realistic to suggest that someone give up eating things they've grown up with and love to promote better health. Still, I think it's important if you can achieve 90% of your food from fruits and vegetables, and occasionally, say with celebrations, include things that aren't in your usual diet, that's still going to promote pretty good health. And all around the world, researchers have studied diets that people who live a long life choose, and what they're finding is that the standard American diet is associated with significant disease and premature deaths, and these other diets are not. It's amazing. So I think it's well worth, if you want to have a long, disease-free life, to consider a diet other than the standard one that we've all grown up with. Now, avoiding excess sugar is also important, as well as processed foods. Doing all of these things will enable you to avoid heart disease, cancer, diabetes, and half the adults in the United States live with a chronic disease the last 5 to 10 years of their lives. It's very, very expensive, and it's not nearly as much fun as being in good health would be. There are a number of recipe books available that have delicious suggestions, and it might be worth trying that if you have some difficulty with what to eat. The big problem is the economic interest with food. Sometimes profits are more important than your health. And in spite of that, try to stay focused on the fruits and vegetables 90% of the time. Now, getting back to vegans, if all you ate were French fries and beer, that might qualify as a vegetarian, but it's certainly not health promoting. And it's not just food that helps, but it's lifestyle. So you want to be sure to always wear your seatbelt, exercise daily, practice safe sex and safe driving. This is from a Lancet study in 2012 having to do with deaths caused by certain foods that were eaten or not eaten. And we'll just go over them briefly here, what you can see. They looked at diets that were high in sugar-sweetened beverages, diets that were high in processed meats, and you can see they list the deaths for men and women, and in both diet that was low in whole grains. And over almost 1.75 million people died preventable deaths. Same thing for a diet low in vegetable. Even more people died from not eating enough nuts and seeds, and more still from diets low in fruits, almost 5 million people. If you eat health-promoting foods and avoid disease-promoting foods, you can avoid high blood pressure, which cause premature deaths of close to 9.5 million people. We'll be talking more about preventable diseases in future talks. Continuing now with hypertension, what you can see, 78 million in the United States have it, and it sometimes begins early. Now they're even saying that in elementary school it can show up. But here, 7.3% between the ages of 18 and 39 have hypertension, and 32.4% from 40 to almost 60. At 60 and older, 65% have it. And the problems with hypertension is that it causes strokes, aneurysms, kidney disease. If you can avoid it, that's the better thing to do. And also what is showing here is the standard American diet primarily centers around meat. Fruits and vegetables don't even make up a large part, whereas in Africa, there's a different diet than in the U.S. African diet consists of dark green leafy vegetables, cereal, maize or corn, legumes, fruits, and vegetables. And there's little to no cholesterol in the food they eat, as well as little to no hypertension or coronary disease. In one study, they admitted in a 2-year period 1,800 people to the hospital. None had hypertension. None had any kind of heart disease. Dr. Barron is a professor at the med school in San Francisco. He suggests these rules for promoting good health. One of the most important things here is to avoid processed foods. However, all his rules are helpful to remember. And when he says eat something colorful at every meal and snack, he's not talking about M&Ms. The more natural color a food has, the more nutrients it has. What are processed foods? Well, the next slide is going to tell us. And this is what processed foods are. Why are they bad for us? Well, they're high in sugar or high fructose corn syrup, both of which can cause disease if used excessively. Other nutrients are taken out when things are refined. Processed foods have less fiber, which is especially needed for good health. And I'll talk more about fiber in the next slide. As you can see, there are 2 kinds of fiber, and many plant-based foods contain both kinds of fiber. So what are the benefits? Well, let's see. Fiber helps move food through the intestines. It's thought that constipation may increase your risk of colon disease. Fiber is filling, so makes you feel like you're full and you don't eat as much. And the fiber doesn't add any calories. Lowering cholesterol, which fiber does, lowers the risk of inflammatory vessel disease, which affects our heart, kidneys, brain. And also, fiber helps to regulate blood sugar by controlling the absorption of it. Well, how much fiber do we need? Let's see. These are the recommendations by the Institute of Medicine, and they vary. If you're 50 or younger, 38 grams for men, 25 grams for women. It gets reduced to a small amount the next year. Well, how do we get our fiber? Here are some examples of amounts of fiber in various foods. It's possible to find more comprehensive lists online. It's easy to see why many people don't eat the recommended amount. Fiber is only found in fruits and vegetables, legumes, and nuts. Food derived from animal sources don't have fiber. Now back to processed food, namely meats. These are the harmful things to eat. They're associated with causing cancer, and often they were the favorites we grew up with. In 2013, there were nearly 2 million deaths in America. 63% of the people died from heart disease and cancer. 10% more were also from other conditions, also associated with nutrition. So what's the best way of avoiding becoming an early statistic? Well, it's different for different people. Just knowing what causes what, however, is a start. Then you can do the healthful things for yourself and avoid the harmful things. In a few minutes, there'll be an interview with the head of the American College of Cardiology. So listen carefully to what he has to say about diets. There are differences, and all will help decrease disease. Things aren't black or white, either or. With the information being provided, it's your job to figure out what's best for you. If you already have to take medicines for something, maybe one diet will appeal more to you than another. This is a start. Remember, none of the foods derived from animal sources have fiber, and all of them have saturated fat. Avoiding things that harm us, like saturated fat, is something most of us can do. We know they're harmful. It's eating the things that help, like fiber, that's important. Businesses work by selling things, often by advertising. They don't, however, advertise about the harmful effects of things like tobacco, cars, or food, so we may not know about it. That leaves it up to you to protect yourself by getting as much information as you can. So what is vegan food? It's food we're all familiar with: vegetables, fruits, grains, legumes, nuts, seeds, mushrooms, herbs, and spices. Also, it's non-refined flour and sugar, cocoa, vanilla, spices, baking soda and powder, cornstarch, and yeast. Only whole food, plant-based items are used. Animal fats, dairy, eggs, and processed foods are not used. So this explains what vegan food is. The following video also will. Dr. Williams, a heart specialist, talks about the degree of benefit from these diets in this next video.
You know, we could look at it from several biochemical points of view, but the fact of the matter is, it may be that vegetables aren't really good for you, but animals are terrible for you. That could be what it is. And that, so when people talk about the F&V, you know, the fruits and vegetable campaign that I know the White House is taking up, it really does make a difference. And there probably are some really good things about the vegetables and fruits in terms of
some
everything
of them which we don't even know about.
Correct.
Right?
And
so
it's you know, it's antioxidants and it's vitamins and it's nutrients and fiber. That may be all well and good, but it might just be that the animals are so bad for you that eating anything else that could nutrify you without eating an animal is probably going to show up better. So, you know, not the biggest fan of being a pescatarian based on the Seventh-day Adventist data, which says that it's sort of an intermediate outcome between the standard American diet and a vegan diet. But if you could lower your heart attack rate just by eating fish twice a week and getting away from red meat, that's sort of how tells you how toxic it is. And so, you know.
But the optimum diet that you would recommend,
correct.
Given the prevalence of mercury and given the prevalence of, you know, cholesterol within the fishes as well, or
correct.
even if it was a fish that had no mercury, a completely clean fish with no DDT or mercury, the optimal diet that you think would provide optimum nutrition and health would be a diet with
sure. And you know, so there are good reasons that a pescatarian diet is better than an omnivore diet.
So pescatarian is better than omnivore? Okay.
But a vegetarian diet is better than pescatarian because you're not getting, you know, with fish you mentioned mercury, but it's also PCBs. There's saturated fat, there's cholesterol, and so you know,
so vegetarian you would classify as better than pescatarian?
By far.
But still a diet with a vegan diet, a plant-based vegan diet, which would not include any dairy or eggs,
right,
would be kind of the gold standard if somebody was willing to do it.
Very, very well said. That's been published from the Seventh-day Adventists, where they categorize their population into 5 categories: the standard American, the semi-vegetarian, where they eat everything, they just lower the amount of meat and increase the amount of vegetables. You could see about a 15 to 20% decrease in hypertension and diabetes just by doing that. And then if you go pescatarian, you get another 15 to 20% decrease. And then if you go lacto-ovo vegetarian, you get another 15 to 20%. And then if you go vegan, you're really talking about an 75 to 80% decrease in hypertension, diabetes.
Fantastic.
Indeed.
Dr. Williams is the president of the American College of Cardiology. Cardiologists are the ones that deal with heart disease, which is America's #1 killer of males and females. That's it for now, and I'll have a new video in about a week. Any questions can be sent to me, and the email address is at the bottom of the slide there, and I'll respond quickly. Next time I'll talk more about foods, why some are harmful, and about what's healthy to eat. Also, I'll share information specifically about heart disease. Thanks for your attention.